الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف خلق الله محمد وآله الطاهرين. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters, and inshallah by now you would probably have come to realize the importance of making that decision, and this kind of decision which will be a life-changing decision for a person. Studying in the Hawzah is in no way easy, and therefore you need to be mentally prepared for all of this. But the satisfaction is that you are able to become acquainted with the most important of issues in this world, and that is you will gain two wings, and these two wings you are going to be able to use, and you will have to use all the time until you depart this world. And you will also be sharing the fruits of these two wings until you depart this world as well, and that is the Quran and the Sunnah. Everything that you do in Al-Hawzah Al-Ilmiyah is for the purpose of strengthening these two wings, the Quran and the Sunnah. You are going to have to go through so many Arabic principles and Arabic laws and grammatic rules. You're going to go through years of studying of ilmul nahu and balagha and sarf, Arabic literature, and it's a very dry subject. You know, a lot of people don't, I should not say a lot of people, but you know, there are people like me who never liked ilmul nahu, but there is going to be an emphasis on this in your study curriculum for a purpose. And that is for you to grasp onto the depth of the language of the Quran and Sunnah. And so when you enter into the Hawzah and you have mastered these two sides of the weights, you know, we know Thaqalain and the famous hadith of Kitabullah wa itrati ahl bayti, you know, these two wings of the Quran and the Sunnah, and everything that you studied was for this purpose. You studied ilmul nahu for the Quran and Sunnah. You studied fiqh for the Quran and Sunnah. You studied logic and philosophy and ulum aqliya, rational sciences, for the Quran and Sunnah. You studied tafsir, obviously, for the Quran and Sunnah, and anything else that you are going to go through. The main objective that you have is to familiarize yourself, first of all, with these two wings and strengthen them, and also to allow others to become familiarized with it through you as a medium. And that's why it's very important to remember that with these two wings you will be able to acquire religious basira. You will have an insight into what religion is, and to find the core precepts of what Ahlul Bayt side of Islam truly represents. Now, when a person has these two wings and they feel that they are now being able to grasp onto the foundations, the core elements of Al-Quran and As-Sunnah, and they're realizing that their insights, their basira is strengthening, that's also going to make them fall down as far as their ego is concerned. But that can only happen if a person brings parallel to all of this, that strictness in their self-disciplining. And this is something that I've mentioned more than once, where from the very beginning of a person's Hawzawi life, they are strictly involved in self-purification and self-discipline. And that's why the second point here, and this is something that has been mentioned by a great alim, number one, the wings of Quran and Sunnah needs to be a fundamental part of the Hawzah student's life, and everything that he or she does needs to feed these two wings. And number two, never to succumb ourselves to the dunya or to dunyawi matters. That whatever we do, wherever we go, we always remember that it is for al-akhirah. If it's something that is going to benefit my akhirah, then I will pursue it. But if it is something that will not benefit my akhirah, then I want to stay away from it. You know, and that's always why we are going to have a problem with, you know, this kind of, if I could say, field or industry, because, you know, as ulama al-akhlaq have said, ilm can become al-hijab al-akbar, the greatest veil. Why? Because maybe through ilm a person might want to pursue fame or power and want to promote their name and insist on making sure that their name supersedes anyone else. You know, don't refer to me by my name only, but you need to always remember that you have to mention my titles, not only my title. You know, Hazrat Ayatullah or Samahat al-Allama al-Sayyid al-Sheikh Hujjatul Islami wal Muslimin. And if someone was to say al-Sheikh and not say Ayatullah al-Sheikh al-Sayyid, or if someone was to say al-Sheikh and not say al-Sheikh al-Doctor, you know, or if someone was to not stand up in respect for them or open up the path for him to enter, you know, they would feel that this is the greatest insult that has ever occurred. Now, I don't mean that, you know, you start walking around and you test people by saying, well, yeah, Zaid, how are you? What are you doing today? No, of course, you need to respect people and by their titles, and it's also something very, very recommended. You know, we have many riwayat from Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam that speak about the recommendation of referring to people by their kunya, you know, not saying Zaid, but saying Abu Ibrahim, you know. So these things do have some kind of etiquette side and common courtesy and things like that. But for a person to be adamant about it, and for me to feel that this is the greatest insult that has ever occurred in the Muslim Ummah by me not being referred to by, this is a kind of way of polluting our souls, and it will indeed affect that level of ikhlas and sincerity that we need to have. You know, ultimately I'm doing this for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whether I get some kind of praising or commending from the people is completely irrelevant. You know, I am my own person, and alhamdulillah, you need to be that person who needs to have that level of courage, that level of independence. You know, you're not being fed by this particular community or this particular group or this particular businessman, in order for you to, try to keep up to their standards, and you want to make sure that you are molded, or you say things that would keep them aligned with you, or keep yourself aligned with them. And that's where politics and these kind of things get involved, and it becomes very, very ugly. And that's what is meant by this second point, being dunya and succumbing to dunyawi matters, which indeed will pollute one's soul. A third important point is that when a person does get involved with their studies, with your studies, and you enter into the Hawzah system, you're going to have a lot of free time, in the sense that there is nobody on top of you screaming down your throat, saying things and reminding you, hey, study, stop wasting your time, stop sleeping excessively, why haven't you prepared yourself for your lesson, why haven't you prepared yourself for your mubahatha, and all these other things. You need to be your own self, and you need to make sure that you monitor yourself as far as your progress in studying is concerned. And that's why occupying yourself with studying and researching and teaching is very, very important. Now, I use the word mubahatha, so I, of course, have to make sure that I clarify that. In the traditional kind of Hawzah study methodology, the lesson is, the dars itself is the main central focus of the student. However, there are things that need to be done before that, and there are things that need to be done after that. What is done before that is pre-lesson preparation. And that means when you have a particular book that you are studying, you need to make sure that you know that you're on page 147. You need to make sure that you've mastered whatever it is before, and you are preparing yourself for the next lesson. So when you enter into the next lesson, you know even roughly, vaguely what's going on. Of course, the ustad is going to give you the correct information, and you are going to be able to comprehend better. But it's better than you entering into the next lesson and having absolutely no idea what is to come ahead. So that's why it's very important for you, before entering into the dars, for you to be ready and prepared. Now, I said that the main central focus is going to be the dars itself, the lesson itself. You prepare for the dars, you're sitting in the dars. Well, I'm not going to be talking about choosing a teacher at the moment, I'll do that in another session. But you're preparing for your dars, and now you're entering into the classroom, you're sitting in the presence of your ustad. You've made sure also, as I've mentioned all the time, you're parallel to your knowledge seeking and everything else is your spiritual purification. You never enter into a dars without wudu. So you've done your wudu, you've made sure that you've purified your intention. You're doing this in service of Imam al-Mahdi ajjalallahu ta'ala farajuhu sharif. You see yourself as one of the disciples, one of the soldiers, one of the students of Sahibul Asri wa Zaman ajjalallahu ta'ala farajuhu sharif, and therefore you're doing that with a lot of strong motivation, coming into the dars on time, always making sure that you're there before your ustad. The ustad is going to give you, I would say, roughly 40% of the main substance of your dars, right? You've acquired about 5 to 10%. Your teacher is going to give you about 40%. What's left now after that is another 50%. That other 50% is, of course, while you're studying, you're going to be writing down notes and explanations and issues or question marks that you have on the side of your text. These are called the margins, right? And that's why they call it the hashiyah, and the marginal notes or the marginal glosses that you are going to be writing. Of course, this is something that has been a custom for all this time as in Hawzah students. If you see all of these manuscript books of our ulama, and even until now, you see a lot of side notes that are written here on the margins. We could call them footnotes or whatnot, marginal notes. And that's very, very important as well. The second 50%, which is after your lesson, is divided into two things. Number one is your further reading, as far as looking at the shuruh, the commentaries, the explanatory notes for this particular textbook that you're studying, and also the mubahatha. And the mubahatha is a discussion, a post-dars discussion, which means you have chosen and agreed with one of your fellow classmates. It could be one person, it could be two people, it could be 5 people, that you are going to sit down and discuss the lesson that was studied that day. And this could rotate. You prepare the mubahatha session one day, your fellow classmate prepares, or your fellow musahaba mates prepares the explanation of the dars the next day. And so when you've left your class and you've gone back to your dormitory, or you've gone back to your home and you've read the shuruh, you are now able to present it to your classmates. So when you have gone through the commentaries and the shuruh and the explanatory notes, and then you're ready for the mubahatha, and I think I've mentioned the word musahaba instead of mubahatha. Musahaba means interview. What I mean is mubahatha. So you're preparing yourself for the mubahatha, and you're going to be able to not only master that text that you have studied that day, but you're also learning the skill of delivery and teaching. And you have a critique right there in front of you, who is going to be, with their open eyes and their open ears, they're going to be making sure that they are paying the utmost level of attention for them to be able to critique you and say, no, well, the dhamir that you just mentioned doesn't go to this word, it goes to that word. That's not what the teacher said. That's not what the matin, the main text, said. And by the way, the sharh, one of the commentaries that you did not mention, says this as a correct explanation. And that's, the benefit of the mubahatha, not the musahaba, the mubahatha. So 10%, 40%, 50%. That 50% is divided into your preparation, and then the rest is the mubahatha. And then you rotate the exact same thing the next day. So you delivered the mubahatha lesson today. Your hambahs, your fellow mubahith, is going to be delivering it the next day. And you're going to be learning and gaining experience as far as delivering a class and everything else, and so is the other person. And that's why it's a custom in the Hawzah that once you finish studying one book. You should be so confident in having mastered this particular book that you are able, once you finish it, you are able to teach that same book. Of course, at a lower level, and you teach it again, and then you teach it again, then you teach it again, until you yourself become a person with your own view or your own opinion about this particular ilm. And that's exactly the very process as to how our ulama went through their study years. Anyway, that was the third thing, occupying yourself with studying and researching and teaching. And mubahatha itself is a part of this teaching process that you need to expose yourself to. There is a fourth point, and that is what kind of methodology do we need to use with sharing this information, sharing this knowledge. Zakat, as the hadith says, zakatul ilm nashrah. The zakat of knowledge is sharing it and propagating it, but I'm going to leave that for another session. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa salatu wa salamu ala ashrafi khalqillahi Muhammad wa alihi at-tahirin.